kick off, Eddie.
I absolutely can. So yeah, so an awful lot of very, very cool stuff on the way for the ORRUK War Clan, specifically for the KRULEBOYZ. And I think that the general theme of the stuff that is on the way for the ORRUKs is that they've gone into the swamp and they've literally dredged the swamp for all the horrible monsters they could find. Strapped some weird-looking war machines to the back of them and prodded them in the general direction of the enemy, and some very creepy, weird, and frankly horrifying stuff. So we'll start off with the Marsh Caller Troggoth. Sluggoth, sorry. So it is a Troggoth, but this is one that specifically lives in the swamps of the Mortal Realms, Gur in particular. A particularly unpleasant version of a Troggoth. If you were thinking, Troggoths, they're pretty gross, they're one of the most unpleasant things in the Mortal Realms, but it's not quite unpleasant enough for me. Is there a way that the Troggoth could in some way be more repugnant? Well, here it is. This is the Marsh Caller Sluggoth. There is a band of grotz on the back of it, and as you can kind of tell from the equipment these guys have, this thing kind of crawls towards the enemy in a very unpleasant, kind of inhuman sort of way, and the grotz on the back are effectively trying to grab themselves captives that they can take off to unpleasant fates somewhere in the swamps. So in game terms, what this thing does, obviously it's a monster, it can dish out the pain up close and close combat, but the grotz on the back are specifically trying to grab enemy infantry models and capture them and take them away, so you get some extra bonus attacks to kind of scoop up enemy units in combat. And the other thing it does is, you can see there's a grot there on the back with a drum. He's competing for favourite grot of the year, perhaps up against Stab Grot and Pop Grot. It's a crowded field this year, but he's given it a go. You've got Drum Grot, and he is beating that drum, and he basically gives you an aura effect bonus, combat bonus for nearby KRULEBOYZ, so you can get some extra pluses to hit and things in close combat. So all in, a very creepy, weird-looking model, and a great little addition to your army in game terms as well. So it's a really cool little thing to add into your KRULEBOYZ army.
The description you described it to me before we began was almost the howdah that the grots are in sort of would float along the top of the swamp as the Sluggoth sort of crawls along the bottom.
Yeah,
so
I like to think that people think it's just a barge full of grots, right? So they're looking at the swamp and they're like, oh, there's just some grots in a little barge, and they're getting closer. And then as it approaches the edge of the shore, you kind of see this Sluggoth crawling out of the swamp, and it becomes apparent it's not just a boat after all; it's this horrible monster contraption thing.
It's a barrel full of horrors on the back of a nightmare. It's gross.
Absolutely. There's some options in the kit as well. You get some options for different heads, and you can pose the grots a little bit as well. So it's a really fun kit. Cool. So Gut Rippers. So this is one of the units that you get in the Dominion box set is the Gut Rippers. This is your kind of battle line unit for the ORRUK War Clans, and especially if you want to do a KRULEBOYZ army. And there is a multi-part version coming for this kit. And one of the things that the kit does is it gives you a few more options to throw into your army. So you get options for a hand weapon, a Wicked Hacker, and shield. If you'd rather go for that compared to the spear, and the trade-off effectively is it's a little bit better up close in combat. It doesn't give you the reach in the same way that lots of armies have options for whether they want to have shields and close combat weapons or they want to go with spears. And the other thing it does is it adds in some command elements into your unit as well. So you've got your boss in there, but you've also got banners and you've got horn blowers. There's some drummers in there you can build too, so you've got the option to throw in some extra command elements into your Gut Rippers. And also, if you just wanted to expand your Dominion box set and make sure you didn't have miniatures that look the same, you could build it up in different ways and just give you lots of options to make your army a bit more unique.
The ORRUKs really, the ORRUK KRULEBOYZ really do have such a sinewy and creepy look to them, don't they? And the weapons, you've got the Wicked Stickers or the Wicked Hackers, depending on your proclivity. Basically, you can be up close and hacky, or slightly further away and sticky, your choice.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it's going to come down to tactics as well. So if you're going for smaller units, sometimes your hackers are the better option, because you can, if you're not too concerned about getting all your guys into close combat because the unit's quite small, sometimes you're better off just having slightly better weapons. If you're going for like a big unit, if you're reinforced and you're going for 20 or even 30 of them, sometimes spears is the better option. But you get the choice for both in that box set, which is cool. And obviously you get loads of new shields as well. So the best thing probably about the Gut Rippers is those kind of really iconic shields, and you've got lots of different faces to play with. So you can do a kind of that weird, wonderful, horrible shield wall effect. But a really, really nice kit. Loads of different options. You could all the command units, loads of different heads. Just a great little kit, really.
Yeah, on the theme of sort of kits that bring some more options to things that we've already seen in Dominion, I believe next up will be the Man Skewer Bolt Boys. terrifying missile fire units from the perspective of the Stormcast Eternals, at any rate. Are the man-skewer bolt boys with their sort of, grot-lengthed bolts and just general horribleness. Eddie, what's the lowdown on these?
Yeah, so this is the man-skewer bolt boys we're familiar with from the Dominion box set. They've actually got a surprisingly vicious stat line in terms of their ranged weapons, because not only are they either hitting on 2s at range or dishing out multiple shots at short range, they also have poisoned shots as well, so you're dishing out multiple mortal wounds on 6s to hit, which is pretty scary. You can throw in a commander in there as well, so he gets some extra shots, but he also gives you the opportunity, because he's a unit champion, that you can use command abilities on the unit without needing to kind of babysit them with one of your bosses. So if you want to send your boss off on a Gnash Tooth or something and run off into the middle of the enemy army, not be too concerned about giving out command abilities, you can make sure that there's a boss back there with the inside the unit themselves. And it also gives you the option to kind of bolster that unit, because it's a great choice for things like using the Unleash Hell command ability on them. So if enemies charging this unit will have to, face down a flurry of bolts. So it's a really, really good unit. Anybody who's played any games with the Dominion box set will see how pivotal this is, and the opportunity to expand it and add command elements to it just makes it even more.
Yeah, that bolt boy boss with his banner pole just looks great, and is going to give you some extra, sort of clout on the battlefield in terms of being able to use them in different ways. Yeah, I think there's a lot to love here, but let's not kid ourselves. This thing is incredible. It's just so mad. Eddie, this is Swamp Boss Scum. What do you know?
So this is the biggest kit, I think, coming for the KRULEBOYZ. This is an enormous monster. You don't quite get a sense of the scale of it, but that is a big orc on the back of it. This is a big old kit. There's 2 different ways you can build this. You can build it as a kind of the generic character, or you can build it as this guy, which is Swamp Boss Scum. He is he does a lot of stuff. He does a lot of stuff for your army. So from a narrative perspective, this is one of the kind of ORRUK's prized capturers of captives. And when we talked about the Slogoth earlier on, its job was to kind of go out and round up and capture enemy infantry and kind of drag those back into the KRULEBOYZ lairs. This guy is after the prize fighters, so he's kind of eyeing up enemy heroes and wizards and stuff, and he charges off on the back of this thing into the middle of the enemy army, trying to kind of capture those. He's one of the best ways in your army, basically, of taking out enemy heroes. The other thing, the thing he's riding on, is even more deadly than that. So it does a bunch of stuff. One of the things is it's just a big, enormous, massive monster. It's got a particularly horrible bite. So it looks like a kind of combination between a crocodile and a dragon and a hippo and a...
I mean, it's so weird, isn't it?
It's got a little bit of sloth mixed in there as well. It's very unpleasant, but because it's like dripping in toxin, basically, it gets the ability that all KRULEBOYZ get, even though it's a mount, where its hits cause mortal wounds on 6s. But because it's so toxic, it and any KRULEBOYZ nearby do even more damage when they hit on 6s. So you can put this thing right in the center of your ORRUK army, and they basically, as it walks around, it's kind of leaving this horrible trail of poison, and the orcs are kind of like dipping their spears and shooters and stuff in the poison, and they get bonuses to all of their hits. So it's a kind of linchpin centerpiece for your ORRUK force, but it does loads for your army. It's a great kind of area effect buffer for your orcs. It does loads of damage in combat. It can kill enemy heroes. It's going to be the kind of centerpiece linchpin, not just as a model because it's impressive, but also as a gaming piece. It's a kind of a great thing to put in the middle of your KRULEBOYZ force. It's very, very good in game.
Love it. And here is the Snatcher Boss variant of the same kit, essentially.
Yeah, so the other one was the named version. This is the Snatch Boss, and the thing is called a Sludge Raker Beast. It does a similar sort of thing. It's not quite as powerful in some of its abilities, but it does allow you to have multiples where you're so inclined in an army. So you can have like a bunch of these things plodding around, and they're particularly effective. If you think about KRULEBOYZ, really are the kind of archetypal horde force for Age of Sigmar, in the sense that your basic troopers are okay, but you want lots of them, and then all the things that you mix in amongst the army bolster them and give them extra bonuses and things, and this is just a great force multiplier for your orcs. So you want this guy maybe not running off by himself, but kind of in amongst the rest of your army, and then all the things nearby get better by proximity to him. He's obviously also a pretty durable looking thing. It's got, you know, lots of wounds, a decent save. There's lots of ways to kind of keep it alive and do extra damage to your opponent. So you're going to see a lot of these about, I think, which is cool because the model is super awesome.
Yeah, no kidding. So, of course, with all of these new units that we've had unveiled, we're going to need a place to learn all about them and find all their rules. So it will perhaps come as no surprise to people who get the sense of how these things work. There are also 2 new Battletomes on the way. You have Destruction Battletome, ORRUK War Clans, and Order Battletome, Stormcast Eternals.
Yeah, so first and foremost, I think let's just talk about the covers. They look really, really cool. So the ORRUK War Clans one there, we talked a little bit about this already, but this just to confirm, the ORRUK War Clans includes not just the Kruleboyz, but also your Iron Jaws and your Bone Splitters. So all of those orcs are kind of go together in this big Battletome. You've also got Kragnos mixed in amongst them as well. So the book allows you to either go, I want everything, I just want a big war, I want everybody's green, get on down, we're going to have a party. Or you can go, I just want Iron Jaws, or I just want Kruleboyz, and then you can lead into that and you get bonuses depending on which direction you go with that.